Right, it's going to be one of those frustrating videos that you end up filming twice. First time problems with the GoPro, but anyway, we'll carry on. So what have we got here? Some add-ons for the S2000? Well, yes and no. So I've been looking into upgrading the car, possibly getting a bit more power out of it. I'm thinking turbocharger rather than supercharger, just because I'm limited by the HKS options. And I decided to buy a cheap eBay turbo, a GT3076. This was actually 130 quid, can you believe it? It's dirt cheap. Get a better look at it. It's quite impressive actually. Everything works in terms of clocking the turbo. I've got everything loose at the moment. There's the turbine wheel, and it's got a T3 housing. Then what have we got here? We have a F20C exhaust manifold with a T3 flange. Now, disappointingly, these won't work. This won't work for definite, and for a few reasons. Mainly, I think the fact that the turbo is completely flush with the flange at 90 degrees of the flange. And I think in theory, to get a turbo to work in the gap where the exhaust manifold is, this would have to be, rather than flush, it needs to be like that. It needs to kick back towards the block. So the turbo might work, but the exhaust manifold definitely won't. But it's not the end of the world. This stuff was not expensive, and this may still be useful, this turbo. So let's have a quick look at the car and I'll explain my reasoning. So at the moment it's got the HKS supercharger that come with the kit, and I did find out that the GT or the HKS GTS 8550 will fit this bracket, but the only downside is it moves the pulley 6mm out this way. So you have to fit a spacer here to resolve that, which I could have made up, not a problem. You cannot get anyone to sell you the supercharger on its own. I believe Evasive have done exactly this modification, but they advised me that this isn't something that should be done on a standard engine, which I think is a bit mad, because the output of the supercharger is completely controlled by this pulley. And I looked at the specs. 100mm pulley would put it at 100,000 RPM, the supercharger, which will put it way like within its specification of revs with rotations without damaging it. So you could actually fit a bigger pulley to further reduce the speed. So you could control output there, and worst case you could put a restrictor. So I don't really understand that. So next option was get 400 horsepower with no, like, minimal lag and quite a lot of power throughout the power band would be a turbo. Now for the UK S2000, there's a few problems. This ABS unit is one of them, and this space here is small, so a top mount log manifold won't really work unless you're willing to get rid of all of this, which is not going to be easy. The other option is to have a turbo that is mounted below, so I think that's doable. If you look at the block design, the block actually, because the engine is on the tilt, I believe it's on the tilt, so the block actually moves away from the suspension leg or the inner wing and steering column, so the space gets larger the further down the turbo's made or made to fit. So I think I could probably make something. So I've ordered a flange, exhaust flange, with oval to circular adapters to go with 1.5mm plate. And my thinking is, during the winter break, I'll sawn the car, take the HKS charger off, clear a bit of space in the engine bay, and look at fabricating my own exhaust manifold. And the plan is at the moment to make it work with the GT76 or GT3076 that I brought, and in theory I could probably do that for quite a good price. Wouldn't be overly expensive. The only downsides to that is that I did actually want a G25 turbo, but it's a lot of money to buy a turbo that you don't necessarily know whether you're going to be able to fit it in the gap. And looking at the gap down there, it is tight. I think the GT25 only comes with a V-band, so 1,500 quid to find out you can't fit it. This is an expensive afternoon or day's work. So yeah, everything's pretty much there. Got the injectors, they're more than enough fuel. Fuel pump would be good for 400. All of this side of the piping I could keep. This goes to the intercooler. The only stuff I'd have to make up is from here to the turbo, which actually looking at it wouldn't be a massive big deal. I can make that out of aluminium. I've got the MIG adapter to use a spool gun to weld aluminium, so I can do that. So that's my current thinking. That's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. It's just frustrating because I'm still enjoying the car. It's still summer. You don't really want to take the car off the road, but at the same time I'm keen to crack on with it. And also I need to be wary of the fact that I will have to buy a clutch at some point. So I very much doubt it's going to take the extra torque of the turbo. When it spools in, that's going to cause issues. I'm thinking run 14 psi, something like that, which means that I won't be overly hurting the engine, won't be running stupid amounts of boost that's going to damage the gearbox and differential, but at the same time, without the parasitic loss of the supercharger, I'd imagine I get quite a lot of power. If you think that, so running 11 pounds of boost, I'm probably making 400 horsepower, maybe a bit lower than that, flywheel that is. So if you take that parasitic loss, or parasitic, I think that's a word, loss off of the output of the engine, then you could probably run 11 psi from the turbo and it would come in at 4,000 RPM and run all the way to 9,000 and put out the same power, assuming it doesn't get choked. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'll try and get a turbo mounted down there. People are saying, it can't be done, or it'll be very difficult. Well, Greedy done it with their tiny little turbo they used on their kit. So I'm sure something can be done. The only way to know for sure is to get everything off and have a look. And like I said, I don't really want to do that at the moment because I'm still using the car. So yeah, that's what I've been up to really, looking at what I'm going to do, driving the car. I just think, I never thought I'd say this, but turbo would just be a fast spooling turbo on this car. 400 horsepower would be pretty insane. And I quite enjoy welding, and it's a project I've been quite looking forward to. And people telling me that it can't be done also further encourages me to do it. I know for certain I won't be able to make an equal length manifold to go down there. It's just space is so tight. But a 4:1 collector should do the same job. If you think about it, if the T3 flange was sitting there, but tilted more towards the block, pushing the turbo towards the block, and then run these in, I think these two you'd run into the front side of the collector, these two into the back side. So two middles would be equal length. The outer and cylinders 1 and 4 would be equal length. So in theory, when the turbo's going, the cylinders will be working together rather than against each other. So that's what I'm thinking. It's worth a try. It's a good project. At the moment, I'm not overly in deep. I mean, if you look, go back to this 130 pound turbo. Say I use this, it doesn't work. I can just buy another T3, a decent one, like say £700-800, and that will do the job. This might be able to sell it for someone who's got a kit car that wants to turbocharge it, because it would work for kit cars, and it would definitely give you a fast spool, a lot better than the Sidewinder manifold. So that's what I've been up to. When I get around to looking at all this and fabricating, then I'll then I'll definitely make a point of showing you. The supercharger, I'll find out if HKS have definitely discontinued the 8550, because that would be a worthwhile upgrade. And his downside to that is it is £2,600 delivered to the UK, and then you've got to make the adapter plate, which I could do by hand, but it would take a while. I think looking at all this, I could probably do everything all in with this cheap turbo. Pipe work probably for £1,000 if I make it myself. That might sound a bit optimistic, it probably would be more than that, but it's worth a try. It'd be a good winter project when it's dark early in the evenings and I haven't got much to get on with. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe for more.